The unlikely match. Ember and Zephyr had been on the road for several months now, traveling from one exotic destination to another. While Ember loved experiencing new cultures and seeing the world, she was starting to feel a bit overwhelmed by Zephyr's constant need for adventure and excitement. One day, while they were exploring a bustling market in Morocco, Ember and Zephyr got into a heated argument. Ember had wanted to spend the day browsing through the shops and savoring the local cuisine, while Zephyr had insisted on going on a camel ride through the desert. As they stood in the middle of the market shouting at each other, Ember realized that they had reached a crossroads in their relationship. She loved Zephyr, but she wasn't sure if she could keep up with his pace anymore. Zephyr could see the hurt and frustration in Ember's eyes, and he knew that he had pushed her too far. He took her hand and led her to a quiet corner of the market where they could talk in private. "I'm sorry, Ember," he said, looking into her eyes. "I know I can be a bit overwhelming sometimes. I just want to make every moment count, you know?" Ember nodded, feeling tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "I understand that, Zephyr, but I need some stability in my life, too. I can't keep living in a constant state of chaos." Zephyr took a deep breath and looked at Ember thoughtfully. "Maybe we need to find a way to balance each other out," he said. "You can help me slow down and appreciate the little things, and I can help you be more spontaneous and adventurous." Ember smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope. "I would like that," she said. From that day on, Ember and Zephyr made a conscious effort to compromise and accommodate each other's needs. They still had their disagreements and challenges, but they worked through them together, with a newfound appreciation for each other's strengths and weaknesses. As they traveled through Europe and Asia, they discovered new passions and interests, and they learned to enjoy each other's company in a way that felt authentic and meaningful. And even though their relationship was far from perfect, Ember knew that she wouldn't want to explore the world with anyone else but Zephyr. Ember and Zephyr's relationship continued to evolve and strengthen as they traveled the world together. They explored ancient ruins in Greece, hiked through the rugged mountains of Peru, and watched the sunset from the beaches of Bali. Along the way, they met all sorts of interesting people and encountered unexpected challenges, but no matter what obstacles they faced, they always had each other to rely on. One day, while they were wandering through the winding streets of Florence, Zephyr surprised Ember by taking her to a small cafe that he had discovered on a previous trip. As they sat outside sipping espresso and nibbling on biscotti, Zephyr took Ember's hand and looked at her seriously. "Ember, there's something I need to tell you," he said. Ember's heart skipped a beat as she looked at Zephyr's face. Had something happened? Was he breaking up with her? "I love you, Ember," Zephyr continued, a soft smile playing on his lips. "I know I haven't always been the best at showing it, but you mean everything to me. You're my home, no matter where we are in the world." Tears welled up in Ember's eyes as she realized the depth of Zephyr's feelings for her. "I love you too, Zephyr," she whispered. As they walked back to their hotel hand in hand, Ember felt a sense of peace and contentment that she had never felt before. She knew that their relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real and honest and full of love. Over the next few months, Ember and Zephyr continued to explore the world together, but they also started to talk about the future. They knew that they couldn't keep traveling forever, and they started to dream about settling down and starting a family. It wasn't an easy decision, but eventually, Ember and Zephyr decided to open a small bed and breakfast in the countryside of France. They spent months renovating an old farmhouse, filling it with cozy furniture and books, and turning it into a welcoming retreat for travelers from all over the world. As they stood on the front porch of their new home, watching the sun set over the rolling hills of Provence, Ember knew that she had found her happily ever after with Zephyr. As their bed and breakfast became more popular, Ember and Zephyr found themselves busier than ever before. They woke up early each morning to prepare breakfast for their guests, spent their days cleaning and maintaining the property, and in the evenings, they socialized with their visitors and shared stories about their travels. Despite the hard work, Ember and Zephyr were happy. They loved the simple life they had created for themselves, and they were grateful for the chance to share their passion for travel and adventure with others. One day, as they were out on a walk through the nearby fields, Zephyr took Ember's hand and looked at her with a twinkle in his eye. "Ember, there's something I want to ask you," he said. Ember's heart raced as she wondered what he could possibly be referring to. "Will you marry me?" Zephyr asked, getting down on one knee and presenting a small velvet box. Tears of joy filled Ember's eyes as she nodded her head vigorously. "Yes, yes, of course!" she exclaimed, throwing her arms around Zephyr's neck. Over the next few months, Ember and Zephyr planned their wedding. They kept it small and simple, inviting only close friends and family members to join them in celebrating their love. As they exchanged their vows in the courtyard of their bed and breakfast, Ember felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. She knew that she and Zephyr still had a lot of adventures ahead of them, but she also knew that she had found her forever home with him. As they danced together under the stars that night, Ember felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over her. She knew that their life together would never be boring, but with Zephyr by her side, she was ready to face anything that came their way. Ember and Zephyr continued to run their bed and breakfast, and their love for each other continued to grow stronger with each passing day. They welcomed many guests from around the world, and their establishment became known for its cozy atmosphere, delicious food, and warm hospitality. As their business continued to flourish, Ember and Zephyr decided to expand their offerings and began to offer guided tours of the surrounding countryside. They would take small groups of guests on hiking and biking adventures, showing them hidden gems and sharing their love for nature and the outdoors. One day, on a hike to a secluded waterfall, Zephyr turned to Ember and said, "I have a surprise for you." Ember looked at him curiously, wondering what he could possibly have planned. "I've arranged for us to take a hot air balloon ride over the countryside tomorrow morning," Zephyr said, a mischievous grin on his face. Ember's eyes widened in excitement. She had always wanted to take a hot air balloon ride, but they had never found the time to do so. The next morning, they woke up early and headed to the launch site. As they soared over the rolling hills and vineyards of Provence, Ember felt a sense of awe and wonder at the beauty of the world around her. She turned to Zephyr and smiled, feeling grateful for the life they had built together. As they landed back on the ground, Zephyr turned to Ember and said, "There's one more thing I want to show you." He led her over to a small patch of wildflowers that he had picked earlier that morning and got down on one knee once again. "Ember, I know we've been through so much together, but I want to spend the rest of my life making more memories with you. Will you do me the honor of renewing our vows?" Tears streamed down Ember's face as she nodded yes, overwhelmed with love for the man who had stolen her heart so many years ago. As they exchanged their vows once again, Ember felt as though she was experiencing a fairy tale. She knew that life wasn't always perfect, but she was grateful for the moments of joy and magic that she shared with Zephyr. As they walked back to their bed and breakfast hand in hand, Ember knew that their love story was far from over, and she couldn't wait to see what adventures the future held for them. Ember and Zephyr continued to run their bed and breakfast, offering their guests memorable experiences and forging new friendships. They continued to explore the countryside and plan new adventures, always making sure to prioritize their relationship above all else. One day, while out on a hike, they stumbled upon an old abandoned vineyard. As they walked through the overgrown vines, Ember felt a sense of nostalgia wash over her. She had always dreamed of owning her own vineyard, but had never pursued it, believing it to be an unattainable fantasy. Zephyr saw the look on her face and asked, "What are you thinking?" Ember hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether or not to share her dreams with him, but something about the way he was looking at her encouraged her to speak her truth. "I've always dreamed of owning my own vineyard," she admitted, looking at Zephyr with a mix of hope and fear. Zephyr smiled and took her hand. "Then let's make it happen," he said. Ember couldn't believe what she was hearing. Could it really be that simple? Could she really have everything she had ever wanted? Over the next few months, Ember and Zephyr worked tirelessly to bring the vineyard back to life. They planted new vines, cleaned up the grounds, and renovated the old farmhouse on the property. They poured all of their energy and passion into the project, determined to make it a success. And they did. The vineyard became a thriving business, known for its exceptional wines and stunning views. Ember and Zephyr found a new sense of purpose in their lives as they shared their love of wine and hospitality with visitors from around the world. As they sat on the porch of their farmhouse one evening, sipping a glass of their own wine and watching the sun set over the vineyards, Ember turned to Zephyr and said, "I never thought I could be this happy. Thank you for believing in me and helping me make my dreams a reality." Zephyr kissed her forehead and replied, "I will always believe in you, Ember, and I will always be here to help you make your dreams come true." As they held each other close and watched the stars twinkle overhead, Ember knew that she had found her soulmate, her partner in life, and her best friend. And she knew that with Zephyr by her side, anything was possible. Years passed, and Ember and Zephyr continued to run their successful vineyard, but they also welcomed a new addition to their family, a baby girl named Janie. As Janie grew up, she became just as passionate about the vineyard as her parents. She loved helping with the harvest and bottling the wine, and she dreamed of one day taking over the business herself. But as Janie got older, she began to realize that there was something missing from her life. She had always heard stories about her parents' travels and adventures before they settled down, and she longed to experience the world for herself. One day, as she was packing her bags for a trip to Europe, Ember asked her, "Are you sure you want to do this? You're leaving behind so much here." Janie smiled and hugged her mom tightly. "I'll always come back," she said. "But I need to see the world for myself, just like you and Dad did." Ember nodded, tears in her eyes. She knew that Janie was right, and that it was time for her to spread her wings and explore the world. As Janie traveled the world, she carried with her the lessons that her parents had taught her: the importance of following your dreams, the value of hard work, and the power of love and connection. And when she returned to the vineyard, she brought with her a new perspective and a renewed appreciation for the beauty and magic of the world. She knew that she would always have a home in the vineyard, surrounded by the love of her family and the beauty of the countryside. As she sat on the porch with her parents, sipping a glass of their finest wine and watching the sunset over the vineyard, Janie knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. And she knew that no matter where life took her, the love and connection she shared with her family would always be her anchor, her guiding light, and her greatest source of joy. Janie continued to work in the vineyard with her parents, but she also traveled the world whenever she got the chance. She met new people, experienced different cultures, and made unforgettable memories. As the years went by, the vineyard continued to thrive, and Janie took over the business from her parents, just as she had always dreamed. One day, as she walked through the vineyard, admiring the rows of grapevines, she felt a sense of deep contentment and joy. She knew that she was living the life she had always wanted, surrounded by the beauty of the countryside, the love of her family, and the satisfaction of hard work and success. As she sat on the porch with her parents, sipping a glass of their finest wine and watching the sunset over the vineyard, Janie knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. And she knew that no matter where life took her, the love and connection she shared with her family would always be her anchor, her guiding light, and her greatest source of happiness. And so, the unlikely match of Ember and Zephyr, the introverted bookshop owner and the adventurous travel writer, had resulted in a beautiful love story, a thriving vineyard, and a family full of love and happiness. That's it for this story. I hope you had as much fun listening to it as I did creating it. If you liked the story and want to see more content like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story.